We received an urgent video call that left us with a heavy heart. On the other end of the line, a distressed person showed us a situation that demanded immediate action. A poor dog had been abandoned, left behind on a cold and deserted street, with an extremely swollen belly. The scene was heartbreaking. The animal was visibly suffering, and the person who found him, touched by his condition, didn't know what else to do other than give him some food and water to ease his torment. The dog, completely alone and vulnerable, was shaking from hunger and cold. His distended belly was a clear sign that he was seriously ill, struggling to survive amid human neglect. His eyes, large and sad, reflected the pain of someone who had already lost hope. It was as if he knew that his only chance of survival depended on someone who cared enough to help. Seeing him in that state, it was impossible not to feel deep sadness and an urgent desire to change his fate. We knew we couldn't waste any more time. Every minute was crucial. With the image of that vulnerable animal etched in our minds, we rushed to help him. The kind person who found him described the situation with despair. He could barely move, he was completely exhausted, and his belly felt like it was about to burst. Even when he tried to eat, the effort was too great, and he had no energy to even walk. The situation was critical, and every second could mean the difference between life and death. As soon as we arrived, our hearts sank even more. The gravity of the situation was evident. The dog was in a state of complete exhaustion, his legs weakening under the weight of his swollen belly, his eyes dull with pain. We gently picked him up and rushed him to the vet, while he, perhaps for the first time in a long time, seemed to feel a glimmer of hope. The look he gave us was a mix of trust and gratitude, as if he knew that, finally, someone was there to save him. Upon arriving at the veterinary clinic, the animal, who we now called Sari, was quickly examined by the medical team. Her condition was alarming. The swelling in her belly wasn't just discomfort, it was a clear sign of something much more serious. And unfortunately, the diagnosis was devastating. Sari's belly was full of worms, parasites that were literally eating away at her body from the inside. The vet explained that she was in critical condition, not only because of the worms, but also because of extreme malnutrition and dehydration. As Sari lay on the examination table, her tiny body struggled to breathe. Every movement was painful. She could barely lift her head, and her legs were so thin that you could see the bone structure beneath her skin. Despite everything, she remained courageous. With a strength of will that moved us all, Sari endured the first medical procedures. The vet began emergency treatment immediately, and the hope of saving her life was rekindled with each action taken. The battle would be long, but we were all determined to fight alongside her. In the early days, Sari's recovery was slow but steady. By day 6, we began to see small signs of progress. Her belly, which had once seemed ready to burst, began to gradually shrink. The dedicated treatment and constant care from the veterinary team were starting to take effect. More importantly, her spirit was returning. She began to eat small portions of food, something that had seemed impossible just a few days earlier. Sari's willpower was inspiring. Her eyes, which had previously reflected pain and exhaustion, now showed determination and confidence. It was a long road to day 9. Sari, still frail, showed more energy each day. She began to stand up, walk slowly around the clinic, and interact with the veterinarians who cared for her. It was clear that her body was responding to the treatment, but the most exciting thing was to see how her personality was blossoming. Sari's will to live was palpable, and every little bit of progress was cause for celebration. She was no longer the vulnerable, dying dog we had first met. Now, Sari was fighting to live. On day 18, Sari's recovery continued to amaze everyone. Although there was still a long way to go, she was overcoming each obstacle with courage. The strength and resilience of this little being was a constant reminder of how love and care can transform lives. And so, finally, on the 20th day, Sari was ready to leave the veterinary clinic and begin a new phase of her life. Sari went to a foster home, where she would be cared for with all the love and affection she always deserved. Her eyes, once filled with fear and pain, now shone with joy and gratitude. She was no longer just a sick, abandoned dog. Sari was now a symbol of resilience and hope. The transformation was incredible. From a life marked by pain and suffering, Sari now lived surrounded by love, enjoying the small joys of being a healthy dog. Today, Sari is part of a family that loves her unconditionally. Her once swollen belly full of worms is just a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of a heart full of happiness. She is a living testament to the power of second chances, and her story reminds us of the importance of never giving up, even in the most difficult circumstances. Sari, with her new life, is proof that everyone deserves a second chance to live with dignity and love.